100 Days of Gratitude, day 51, and today I am grateful for savings, and in particular this dynamic between, saving and spending. I don't know about you. Would you kind of categorize or define yourself as more of a saver or more of a spender? And absolutely, I know that that can change, right? Depending on maybe the month, the year, time of life. I know when I was younger, definitely more of a spender as a kid, right? Just could not wait, like buy candy, hockey cards, micro machines, whatever it was. Apparently, just that pocket money burned a hole in my pocket, and I just wanted to spend it. And it wasn't until it was probably when I left home, leaned more towards saving. And yeah, for my entire adult life, I've definitely been more of a saver than a spender. And recently, I've just kind of been playing with that dynamic. And it came up recently because my wife, as I've shared before, getting into snowboarding this year, my wife was like, kind of jokingly, but also like a little bit of a rib, was like, you couldn't have picked a more expensive hobby, huh? And it's true, I mean, despite me having bought, like secondhand equipment and all these things, yeah, if you want to go to the mountains, it's like easy, per person, easy, $150 for the day. And most people, myself included, it's like, but where I'm sitting at with this, especially having come from somebody that, leans more towards saving, being more frugal. I mean, it's literally how I've built my business is, more than anybody I know in, that's kind of like a business person, very kind of frugal, very much reinvesting back in the business. I don't, not been a massive spender or taking, profits and money out of the business just to kind of fuel my lavish lifestyle. But, recently, I've been choosing. I was like, no, I've done it like 3 times, like I'm gonna do that, like otherwise, what am I saving for, right? In that regard. And actually, a really helpful kind of framework that I came across. This was years ago, and I'll share it, but just know, I mean, for me personally, I've kept it more of a mental framework, though you can absolutely kind of map it out as a very kind of specific, down to the decimal point, very methodical, and this idea of like jars, right? So savings defined as, that which is the extra, the excess left over from, your daily living expenses, what's required to live. And the extra can be savings. And so the jar method looks at this where, okay, you've got your percentage of your income that goes towards absolute foundational living expenses. Maybe you've got rent or a mortgage, you've got, food expenses, you've got, all these things that add up that are just like, they're kind of non-negotiables for you to live. And whether that is, 40% or 98% of your income, or who knows, wherever on that spectrum that you are, there's some proportion left over. And I should say right off the top, like that's partly why I'm choosing savings as a piece of gratitude, is the fact that whether it's 2% or 50%, I'm grateful that we have excess. We have ability to save. I mentioned yesterday in my video that YouTube channel Indigo Traveler, and there's this one episode he's in Ghana, and he goes around and he's chatting to all the people, and there's this guy that drives must be like a little taxi, a little rickshaw. He's working 13 hours a day just to afford 1, maybe 2 meals a day, right? Depending on his day. There's no excess. There's no like ability to save in a position like that. And I would say that the vast majority of, those in our society, in our culture, again, with exceptions, of course, but certainly not like in Ghana, where there's no ability to save. It comes down to choices. Again, some people are spenders. I get that mentality. I've seen it. I witnessed that in other people. They just got to spend. They just got to buy stuff. And a lot of people overspend, and debt is incredibly dangerous, harmful, unsustainable way to live. And being able to save and develop that kind of practice is good. Now, there's the other side of it too. Are we saving in dollars? Well, for the short term, okay, one can save in dollars. There's a practicality of that, but the long term, like I personally, I've mentioned this in a previous video, like, the idea of an RESP, saving for my child's education in dollars, like, so that what, in 18 years they can inflation of 2% per year, of which they're constantly overshooting every year. The value of the dollar, what we can purchase with that, goes down. So just think about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? Like, you got to think about what you're saving for, and chances are dollars may not be the best thing to save in. So there's other things, and of course the idea of savings can apply to so many things. And if we look at the idea of seed saving, kind of more natural principles, taking it outside the framework of money and currency, savings is kind of a necessity of life. And so many animals save, right? Squirrels, chipmunks, and then the idea of seeds, right? Like a farmer to plant out a crop, right? For every seed you can produce multiples more, and so you're getting an excess, and that you always want to save a percentage of those seeds to replant next year, right? And this is the idea of like saving is, I believe, built into nature, into our natural biology, a part of our survival, part of our way to thrive. But yet, so does the spending, so does the planting, right? You save all that seed, well, it doesn't make any good to not consume that seed as food, or replant it so that you can regrow it again, but nor does planting it out and then eating it all, right? You need to save a certain percentage for future investment, future growth. Again, whether that is dollars or seeds or anything, there's this principle, this dynamic of finding that right percentage for yourself. So what I came across years ago, again, which I've used more of a mental framework versus having it in an Excel spreadsheet, is there's a certain percentage, required, right? You grow out that grain, you need to eat a certain amount of it to sustain yourself. A certain amount you're going to save for the next year's harvest. So in this analogy of like, the jar method and breaking it down by percentage, you identify, let's just say it's 80%, right? That is for your everyday sustenance and living. Then that remaining 20%, you break it down into different allocations. So maybe there's long-term savings. Maybe it is your child's education. Maybe it's down payment on a mortgage. Maybe it's, you name it, right? What are those things that kind of long-term savings, retirement, whatever that is, that gets, and you decide, what is that percentage amount? Then you have something that could be education. There's another jar, there's another allocation that could be, I'm just going to get some books. I'm going to go, take a course. I'm going to, do this workshop or a retreat or something to kind of invest in your own education and learning. Another jar could be donation, right? I think this is another kind of natural human element. We see a lot of religions will have donation, this idea of tithing. And sometimes it's set by the church. It's got to be, boom, 10%, 5%, 15%, whatever that is. There's lots of variations, and one can come up with a set amount of like, okay, in the jar, 5% of what I earn, I'm going to, give that out as donation. And it doesn't need to be in some sort of, tax write-off charitable return. It could be, GoFundMe's. It could be paying it forward on the street, like, one gets to decide, and you've got a certain amount allocated from your own income. And then the other one, and you can do as many jars as you want, right? Breaking that down. Another one that kind of plays into this dynamic of saver versus spender is this idea of the fun bucket, or the fun jar. And yeah, I suppose for me snowboarding would would fall into that. So two things it does, right? If you're a real spender, it really puts a container around how much you're spending on your own fun. For some people, like, that's very useful, and for others, it's actually very useful in the sense that it forces you to just have some fun play money, right? Like, maybe it's only 2% that you're allocating of your monthly income to this fun jar, right? And it's like, hey, there's $200 sitting there. Like, what am I gonna do, right? So it can either kind of limit your spending if you're a real kind of fun seeker and like to spend on yourself, but if you're more of a saver and you don't do that, it's like it gives you permission, it gives you money that you're like, okay, great, I've got this jar, or this account, whatever you do it, you can physically separate it out into jars, or you can just kind of have it as a spreadsheet, so you know that your bank account's like broken into certain chunks. Or what I've been doing is just kind of more of like a mental framework. I don't get down into the decimal point and I begin allocating it out. Like, I kind of mentally think about, okay, like, hey, I have money for fun, I have money for education, I have money for this and that, and it just kind of gives me that framework that allows a bit more freedom. Otherwise, again, I tend to be more of a saver and not spending, a little bit more frugal, and then I like this idea of kind of breaking it down into certain portions, allocation. So anyways, I am grateful for saving, the ability to have savings, the ability to, and a framework to kind of think about, spending as well, and playing that kind of dynamic between the two. So 100 Days of Gratitude, day 51. Those are my thoughts and reflections today.